A deep, dark web of evil. As I sit here and take in all of the news from every direction, all I see is deceivers, liars, corporate media, cover-ups, agenda, all pushing the same propaganda. It's time for a game changer, a visionary, an innovative person who changes the way that people think of the situations. It's time for Game Changer TV, telling it like it is. Get in the game. I am not going to rush through this. This is a very important video. Thanks for tuning in to Game Changer TV. I'm your host, Terri Lynn, and this is the channel where every day we're telling it like it is. Today is December 30th, 2025. And we're going to talk about who's all caught up in this deep, dark web of evil. I'm going to really need y'all to concentrate on this and realize that there is an alternate world from what the common people live. Normal parents go to work, they go to their kids' recital, they go grocery shopping, they sit down at the table, they try to manage their bills, they budget. When you're filthy rich and money is not even exciting anymore, controlling people becomes your new fixation. Controlling people, oppressing people, deciding who lives or dies. There's people that do not live like we live. We get on our knees and we pray to Jesus. We pray for our friends. We pray for our enemies. We pray for those that have hurt us. We pray. We're like, Lord, change me, make me a better person. But the Bible says it would be easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than for a rich man who's corrupted to get into heaven. Okay? The love of money is the root of all evil. And there are a lot of people in this world that we don't see that are in a club that we're not part of, that they do ungodly things in the background, and then they have to step out onto the street with a face like they're sweet and innocent. This is going to be a wake-up call. This might even make you cry. But you need to understand what is going on all around us and whose door this is going to end up at. Warning, viewer discretion is advised.
Chop up babies or cut the heads off of cats.
As far as Anton LaVey is concerned, I'm sure there's a lot of people that follow him and consider him a serious Satanist, and I have interviewed a couple that do. But from what I can read on the occult books and the other Satanists that I have interviewed, they don't consider Anton LaVey that serious. He's a showman.
Judy and I heard about each other. I don't know if you heard about me or I heard about you.
Right.
But it was a natural relationship because we're both private investigators. I'm in Los Angeles, she's down in Long Beach. And as any good investigator would do, just to learn or hear about satanic cults isn't enough. You've got to jump into it and delve into it and develop sources and informants, which we both have done. I've been told by a woman who was born into the movement and was in it for more than 15 years, that there's...
Let me just tell you, that man right there is Ted Gunderson, and he used to be the head of the FBI in Los Angeles.
Who was born into the movement and was in it for more than 15 years, that there are several hundred satanic groups across the nation that practice human and animal sacrifice. In all walks of life, doctors, lawyers, airline pilots, educators. I have been told of one superintendent of schools who's a practicing Satanist.
It wasn't until about 4 years ago that I what we call breakthrough. I began to have these memories. Then I had to start putting my life together. One of the earliest memories that I had was a brick wall, and they took these babies and they nailed them by their heads in a circle on that wall, and then they had 3 crosses. And in the middle cross, they had a man hung up there. Now, that man had tried to save my twin sister and me. And unfortunately, they captured him. And so they hung him up there, and then they hung my twin sister on one cross, and they hung me on the other side on another cross. But they had this pile of bloody baby parts in front of them. And they stood there with my older sister, and they threw those parts at us as we hung up on the wall. They follow a religious calendar, similar to the Christians have a Christian calendar. And at one of their big times is at the crucifixion of Christ. And so what they were doing is they were playing out the crucifixion of Christ.
The younger the soul, the more innocent the soul, because they've had less chance to sin. So the more innocent the soul that they sacrifice, the more power in the sacrifice. And that was told to me, again, by a practicing Satanist. When they kill the child and they've brought them to total fear, if they eat the flesh, then they, of course, acquire the child's awareness, his uniqueness, and, his IQ, his courage, his whatever.
Well, the area I'm from, on the North Shore of Chicago, in the probably middle 1800s, I believe that that's about the time when this must have begun in that village, that the Satanists infiltrated. My grandfather, who was a very prominent Methodist minister in the Chicago area, I believe that he not only was the Methodist minister, but he was also into the satanic beliefs and practices. My father was corporate executive for Chicago Stockyards for 32 years, so he had an easy access to a lot of things there at the stockyards that they could use in these kind of rituals. And we had 2 little grocery stores there with walk-in cold butcher units. And that's where they would hang these bodies, that they would use in the rituals. And they would hang me up there and tell me that this is what would happen to me if I opened my mouth and talked.
They also are very heavy into mind control, and they pass this on from generation to generation. In other words, they'll have a whole family that'll practice Satan worshiping. They take those kids and they raise them. It's like the mind control in Vietnam, but the communists have used in the past.
And then, of course, we've got all our adult survivors, and there's so many that it's frightening, actually. But they're coming forward, and they're saying, somebody stop it.
I was alone in the room at first. Then there were people that came in. They looked like priests. They had black suits on like a priest. They didn't have a white collar. They had black masks on. Then they began to chant. They brought the baby that was in the bucket. They pulled a baby up out of that bucket. And the baby was kind of whimpering like a baby, a newborn baby. They literally took the knife and went from the chest bone down and cut it wide open. They then took, everyone in that room took the guts of the baby, literally reached in, hand in, and took with the baby, still moving, screaming, and apparently the baby then went limp, but they took the living guts of this baby out and ate it. My grandfather was doing the praying, and he began a prayer out of the book. As he held the baby over me, he said, "O Holy One of the world, we offer you this libation for strength as a living sacrifice for you."
I stopped a lot of it because I didn't want no kind of curse to come on. So I went past some, what she said.
Your power and glory. And we dedicate this Virgin of God and make her holy by fornication, molestation, incest, cannibalism, and torture. The baby was dead, the girl was dead, and I was just there. And these people were all around me, so I just assumed that I was going to get the same thing.
Bear in mind that they also incinerate. They have the cremators, and they destroy the bodies. There's no evidence.
Part of the proof that happens, wasn't it somebody down in Texas, that wasn't it Henry Lee Lucas, who actually said that he had gone to schools where they taught him how to kidnap a child?
Who trained you? hands of death. We were trained in detail what to do, what to look for. It's just like going out and going to school. It's tight. We learn through books, through actual participation in killings.
Lucas claimed that he was trained to kill as a Satanist. Unless the FBI, law enforcement in general, looks at this seriously and does something about it, it's going to continue to expand. We're going to have the pyramid effect.
So often when we have tried to get protection from law enforcement, they don't believe us. I'm very careful. I'm very careful where I talk about this, and you know, I screen the people I'm around. They can do anything they want to. That means if they cared to kill you, they wouldn't think anything of it.
Somebody left 13 dead red roses and 13 dead chrysanthemums on my front lawn in Westwood, California.
I received 6 dead lizards and 6 dead birds in a pile on my porch.
I did not wait to see if it was a threat. I left town immediately.
But I did know who had left them there. So I just picked them up and drove up to where they lived and put them back on their porch.
In addition, I developed a considerable amount of information on 18 murders that were committed by the satanic cult people and members of their group. Some were drug-related, some weren't, some were sacrifices. And I have this information in sealed envelopes, in 12 sealed envelopes, and if anything happens to me, these envelopes with the names, dates, places will be mailed to some key people.
Now let's talk about some of Epstein's victims.
I just woke up in a laboratory and I was naked, and
She said she woke up in a laboratory and she was naked. And you remember in the Epstein file release, it showed like a dental office laboratory type thing with weird heads on the wall? Let's hear this.
I just woke up in a laboratory and I was naked and paralyzed on a table. And there were 6 people in hazmat suits around me, and then there was like a female doctor standing behind my head. And I couldn't move and I couldn't talk, but my eyes could move. And sorry, it's actually really hard to even talking about that because, you know, I had such bad panic.
It's okay.
Sorry. I mean, I got taken to New Mexico, to New York, to Paris, to Palm Beach, to the island. I got taken to all the properties. The problem is that they release information, it's going to break people's minds. It'll bend their brains. A lot of people.
If they release the information, it will blow people's minds. It will break their brains.
Information, it's going to break people's minds. It'll bend their brains. A lot of people won't be able to handle it. A lot of people won't be able to handle it. So I suppose that's why they don't know what to do. So I suppose that's why they don't know what to do. Because if they release the truth, all hell will break loose. Release the truth, all hell will break loose.
She was in an interview with Ellen DeGeneres. Ellen asked her, "How do you look so good?" And she said, "Well, I just microneedle." Ellen was like, "Well, where do you get the serum from?" Because Ellen knows, right? And she was like, "We have means to get the serum." And Ellen was like, "Yeah, so you get it from a baby." Sandra Bullock. She was in an interview with Ellen
This is one of the most creepiest interviews on The Ellen Show. Ellen brought on Sandra Bullock, who is a popular actress, and in this interview she started talking about the secret on how celebrities stay young for longer. Just watch this.
Explain what it is.
Well, it's this way in which one forces through microneedling. It pushes through the skin and ruptures the collagen.
At this point is where it starts to get weird. Ellen then tries to get Sandra Bullock to explain in detail on what they actually do.
But then it pushes the
What are you pushing into the skin, Sarah?
Well, you push in whatever the facialist would like to insert into your pores.
But what is it?
It is an extraction from a piece of skin that came from a young person.
As you can see, she takes so long to explain what it actually is and ended up saying it's from a young person. But it doesn't end there. Ellen then says something very creepy at the end. Watch this and let me know your thoughts.
Far, far away, and they somehow figured out how to extract.
It's foreskin from a Korean baby.
This is one of
Do you ever thank me for your career?
I know you feel. Yeah, I know. Yes, I do every day. At Grace,
Don't be sarcastic.
At Grace at dinner, I thank you. My children thank you because we have a good life.
Yes. Because
you gave us.
Yes.
Your career.
Yes.
And we're grateful.
I really didn't know that was the truth until someone finally told me.
It's not the truth.
I will find the guy that wrote the script.
Which one? Which script?
It was both Miss Congeniality and Speed.
Can I tell you what happened with Congeniality?
Yeah.
Do you want the truth? This is what happened. The writer saw you. I think you were hosting something.
The Emmys.
The Emmys, and you were doing an interview about wearing a dress.
Right.
And that you just didn't like it.
Right.
Or didn't feel like you.
I had to learn how to walk in it.
And he went, oh. And so maybe he lied to me.
Yeah, he did.
And maybe he did write it for you. You turned it down.
Do you? Okay, let's talk about this facial that you're obsessed with. How many, did you get the whole cast of Ocean's 8 to do
Not
this?
everybody.
Okay, good, smart ones.
Just those that I thought would appreciate it.
Okay, explain what it is.
Well, it's this way in which one forces through microneedling. It's like a little roller with these, some of you, I think many of you know it, and it pushes through the skin and ruptures the collagen and then boosts it. You look like a burn victim for a day, but then it pushes the
What are you pushing into the skin, Sandra?
Sarah?
Carrie? What are you pushing into the skin?
Well, you push in whatever the facialist would like to insert into your pores.
But what is it?
It is an extraction from a piece of skin that came from a young person far, far away, and they somehow figured out how to extract.
It's foreskin from a Korean baby.
Marina Abramovic mentioned in Podesta emails sparks accusations of Satanism. Y'all remember John Podesta, who was Hillary's campaign manager, him and his brother Leon Podesta, and the Pizzagate scandal and the Comet Pizza and all of that. And she was included in those emails, and they were accused of Satanism. Then in the 80s, the Franklin cover-up out of Nebraska involved a bank, child abuse, Satanism, and murder in Nebraska, and we're going to cover this. The Franklin child prostitution ring allegations. The Franklin child prostitution ring allegations began in June 1988 in Oklahoma, Nebraska, when multiple prominent Nebraskan political and business figures were accused of involvement in a child sex trafficking ring. The allegations attracted significant public and political interest until late 1990, when separate state and federal grand juries concluded the allegations were unfounded and the ring was a carefully crafted hoax. But wait till we get into this. The Franklin cover-up refers to a serious, that was Wikipedia, this is Google search. The Franklin cover-up refers to serious but officially unsubstantiated allegations that a child sex trafficking ring operated out of a now defunct Franklin Community Federal Credit Union in Omaha, Nebraska. in the late 1980s. The children were alleged victims of this ring, some of whom were reportedly from the Boys Town orphanage and the foster care system. Allegations surfaced in 1988 centered on the credit union's manager, Lawrence E. King Jr., a prominent Republican Party activist. Alleged victims claimed they were abused at lavish parties hosted by King, some of which reportedly involved high-level U.S. politicians and satanic ritual abuse. Now, y'all write this down. This was the late 1980s. High-ranking U.S. politicians and satanic ritual abuse. The victims, specific individuals such as Paul Bonancia and Alicia Owen, came forward as alleged victims, providing detailed, though sometimes contradictory testimonies of abuse and exploitation. The allegations were investigated by separate state and federal grand juries. In the late 1990s, both grand juries concluded that the allegations were unfounded and a carefully crafted hoax. They also found that some witnesses had fabricated or recanted their stories, often under pressure or due to alleged inducements. The term cover-up comes from the 1990 book by the former Nebraska State Senator John DeCamp titled The Franklin Cover-Up, which argued that the official investigation had deliberately concealed the truth to protect powerful individuals. Proponents of the cover-up theory point to several factors as evidence. Larry King's extensive connections to influential figures in Nebraska and Washington, D.C. Now, I'm emphasizing Washington, D.C., high-ranking officials in the 1980s for a reason. Suspicious deaths. The suspicious death of Gary Concordier, the chief investigator for the Nebraska Legislature Franklin Committee, in a plane crash. Suppressed documentary. A British documentary on the scandal, Conspiracy of Silence, was produced but never aired on its original network, which fueled conspiracy theories. Institutional betrayal. The claims that institutions like the Boys Town meant to protect vulnerable children were instead used as sources for victims. Mainstream investigations and journalistic reports, however, have largely dismissed the child sex trafficking claims as an example of satanic panic. The financial crimes committed by Lawrence King, embezzlement of almost $40 million from the credit union, was substantiated, and he was held accountable for those.
Is if they release information, it's going to break people's minds. It'll bend their brains. A lot of people won't be able to handle it. So I suppose that's why they don't know what to do. Because if they release the truth, all hell will break loose.
And this was the Podesta artwork. Tony Podesta, Hillary's campaign manager. Children in cages with animals or demons. Children tied up. It looks like it's an empty pool. Lady Gaga with Marina Abramovich. Supposedly that's a fake person. Does that look fake? This is all Tony Podesta's artwork. So we saw Marina Abramovich with Lady Gaga eating the fake blood on the man in that tub. Marina Abramovich mentioned in Podesta email sparks accusations of Satanism. An email from the artist forwarded by Clinton's campaign chief has been seized on by the right as proof that the Democratic candidate has links with the occult. Now, the Franklin cover-up. Child abuse, Satanism, and murder in Nebraska. Now, in 2016, I bought this book. You can't read it that good, so I'm going to read the back of the book. I'm going to read it off my book. The shutdown of Omaha, Nebraska's Franklin Community Federal Credit Union, raided by federal agencies in November 1988, sent shockwaves all the way to Washington, D.C. Y'all remember that? $40 million was missing. The credit union's manager, Republican Party activist Lawrence E. Larry King Jr., behind whose rise to fame and riches stood powerful figures in Nebraska politics and business and in the nation's capital. In the late 1980s, Washington and the Franklin cover-up and child abuse. In the face of opposition from local and state law enforcement, from the FBI, and from powerful Omaha World Herald newspaper, a special Franklin committee of the Nebraska legislature launched its own probe. What looked like a financial swindle soon exploded into a hideous tale of drugs, Iran-Contra money laundering, a nationwide child abuse ring, and ritual murder. 19 months later, the legislative committee chief investigator died suddenly and violently, like more than a dozen other people linked to the Franklin case. Author John DeCamp knows the Franklin scandal from the inside. In 1990, his DeCamp memo first publicly named the alleged high-ranking abusers. Today, he's an attorney for two of the abuse victims. Using documentation never before made public, DeCamp lays bare not only the crimes, but the cover-up, a textbook case of how dangerous the corruption of institutions of government and the press can be. It is sweep and end what it portends for the nation. The Franklin cover-up followed the ugly precedent of the Warren Commission. Y'all, I'm tired. It's in the middle of the night again. So, Satanism, child molestation, rape, child rituals. The New York Times, 1988, Christmas Day, 1988. Nebraska inquiry is given file on sex abuse of foster children. A state file containing reports of physical and sexual abuse of foster children based on interviews from some of the children, including Franklin child prostitution ring allegations. And y'all remember, Biden administration lost, quote unquote, 60,000 illegal immigrant children in the U.S., says former Deputy Border Patrol agent. How do you lose 600,000 children? And there's past history of undocumented foster type children, and Anthony Fauci ran HIV test experiments on foster kids in the 80s. So how do you think they lost these 60,000 kids? How do you lose 60,000 kids? Where are they? What are they used for? Rich people's youthful looking skin? Sacrifices? Abuse? Buying and selling? Organ harvesting? Where did the kids go? Child Welfare Information Gateway, the Franklin cover-up, child abuse, Satanism, and murder in Nebraska. Now, you remember Hilary Clinton's campaign manager, Tony Podesta, and Pizzagate? Spirit cooking? This is from Good Morning America. NBC News, Hillary Clinton covered up pedophile ring at the State Department in 2013.
Over here, and we are following this breaking news out of Washington. Some serious allegations this morning facing the State Department.
That's right. According to internal State Department memos, the agency might have called off or intervened in investigation into possibly illegal and inappropriate behavior within its ranks, allegedly to protect jobs and avoid scandals. This concerns the time that Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. We want to get right to NBC's Chief White House Correspondent Chuck Todd with the latest. Chuck, good morning to you.
Good morning, Savannah. You know, there's an old saying in Washington that the cover-up is worse than the crime. But in this case, both parts of it are disturbing. Allegations of prostitution and pedophilia, and allegations that those crimes were somehow covered up or not looked into. So the State Department this morning is having to respond to those claims and those investigations of misconduct by State Department officials, including by an ambassador and security agents attached to then Secretary of State Hilary Clinton. And the allegations are that these investigations were whitewashed, quashed altogether, and that those orders came from high up.
NBC News has obtained documents related to ongoing investigations into some disturbing allegations involving State Department personnel and at least one ambassador. A State Department memo says the ambassador, quote, routinely ditched his protective security detail in order to solicit sexual favors from both prostitutes and minor children. The memo also says a top State Department official directed department investigators to, quote, cease the investigation into the ambassador's conduct. It's just one of what another document describes as, quote, several examples of undue influence from top state officials. On Monday, a State Department spokesperson will not confirm specific investigations.
I'm not going to talk about specific cases, but I can say broadly that the notion that we would not vigorously pursue criminal misconduct in any case is preposterous.
A former investigator for the department's inspector general has complained to Congress and the media that the investigations have not been thorough because of the pressure from those high-level officials.
We take every allegation of misconduct seriously, and we look into it.
It was less than 6 months ago that another major internal investigation painted Hillary Clinton's State Department in a negative light. That scathing report on the failed diplomatic security procedures in the aftermath of the Benghazi attack.
We noted the whistleblower in this case, a member of the Inspector General investigative team at the State Department. She's gone to Congress demanding an investigation, and it's our understanding Congressman Ed Royce, the leading Republican in House Foreign Relations, says he does plan on having an investigation, and no doubt hearings are probably going to come soon as well, Savannah.
But Chuck, where are we on this? Is at this point just allegations from one whistleblower? Have they been substantiated in any way?
Well, here's what it is. The whistleblower says that this report, that the internal investigation having to do with how diplomatic security even investigated these allegations, that's where this scathing report came from. It's how the investigators somehow dropped the investigations, including into this ambassador and onto some other deal, including on folks that were part of security detail. Inspector General whistleblower believes that the evidence was clear, but the problem was the investigation wasn't done in time to find out for sure if this misconduct was happening.
Attention, because really, that's all that matters to me.
Did you think Trump was going to be president?
Yes, I hoped he was, actually, because the alternative was not very palatable to me.
Did you think he...
I'll tell you why, because it will implicate me in horrific
Sounds like you're asking me to inquire, but I'm not going to.
I am actually, because I'm not sure I'm going to say it or not.
Well, it sounds like you're egging me on to ask you. I want to respect your privacy.
I am actually, because I'm not sure I will say it. I've never said it, ever.
Well, if you want me to...
Not in 6 years since I left police have I ever stated why.
Do you want to?
Absolutely.
Okay, well then, you're welcome.
Okay, so when I went on the run in police, I had friends in the U.S. Embassy in Belize. I knew what was coming down. I'm not stupid. I had arranged with the head of security. I was going to come in. He said, sir, we have it from the highest authority. We are not to allow you entry into the U.S. Embassy. Understand me. Who was the highest authority of the State Department? Hillary Clinton. I'm an American citizen with a American passport. I'm sorry. I'm not wanted in America. I've got no crimes in America. Is it not a reason to say, I don't think I'm going to vote for you?
And yet you're here now.
For a month and a half, I was on the run. The reason that the government wanted to collect me was that after they had raided my property in 2012 in the jungle, shot my dog, abused me, destroyed $500,000 worth of my property over a bogus charge, I was pissed off. And so I donated to many secretaries within the government laptop computers, really nice ones, that were preloaded with viral spyware. Within a week, the entire government computer system was under my control. I was watching, monitoring, listening. I was looking for information that they had set me up for that raid. I didn't find that. I did find out that the Minister of National Defense was the largest drug trafficker in all of Central America. The Minister of Immigration the largest human trafficker.
We don't want to get killed by them either, so we're probably not going to
That's
share
fine.
that.
That's fine.
It was getting a little hot.
And you remember when I was talking about the Franklin cover-up? In the late 1990s, all the way up to Washington, D.C., and Lawrence King, who was over that credit union, was friends with people in high places, and he had the pedophilia ring in Nebraska in the late 1980s. Well, here it was in the late 1980s under the Bush. Bush was president in 89, but I think they're going to say under the Reagan and Bush administration. So I don't know what year it started, but it was reported on the news that there was a child prostitution ring in the White House.
And if Washington doesn't have enough to talk about these days, the Washington Times reported today that unidentified White House aides in the Carter, Reagan, and Bush administrations now are being investigated for using the services of a call boy ring. The paper reports that 2 of the male prostitutes were given a late-night tour of the White House last year. The White House press secretary, Marlin Fitzwater, said he knew nothing of this investigation. NBC's Lisa Myers reports her sources in the U.S. Attorney's Office say the investigation is not focusing on prostitution, but on fraud involving the use of credit cards to pay for the call boy services.
So they weren't worried about the prostitution ring, the child prostitution ring, but they were worried that government credit cards were used to pay for it. You know, the Maury show, Connie Chung, you know, the lie detector test says that is true or whatever. Maury is Connie Chung's husband. They got married in 1984. So she used to be an anchor on the news too. Here is her report on it.
Sources confirmed a Washington Times report today that D.C. police and the Internal Revenue Service are investigating a male prostitution ring whose clients may have included people connected to the Bush and Reagan administrations. But the sources told CBS News there is no indication at present that the investigation involves any high government or military officials.
I wrote a book called The Franklin Scandal, a story of power brokers, child abuse, and betrayal. And Epstein, it's about a child trafficking network, and Epstein in many ways is a carbon copy of the Franklin scandal.
Release information, it's going to break people's minds. It'll bend their brains. A lot of people won't be able to handle it. So I suppose that's why they don't know what to do. Because if they release the truth, all hell will break loose.
You kind of start a lot of this stuff. So if you don't mind taking a minute, share your background with the audience so they know who you are and what you've done.
I got a roll in. I wrote a book called The Franklin Scandal, a story of power brokers, child abuse, and betrayal. And Epstein, it's about a child trafficking network, and Epstein in many ways is a carbon copy of the Franklin scandal.
Look how long this has been going on and all the kids involved.
And I started doing research on the Franklin scandal in 2002, and then the book, I spent 7 years on it. It was published 2009, 2010. And at that point, I was pretty exhausted. When you go as deep into a child trafficking network as I went, I mean, I interviewed like a blackmail photographer and a lot of other, and found lots of victims and interviewed them. And it was...
This is the story of Lawrence King, right?
Yes, Lawrence King.
Which is a horrible, horrible story.
Great expense, yes. And so I spent 7 years on that, and then the book came out, and no one wanted to touch it. I mean, I live in New York City. I live in the epicenter, the mecca of media, and I have had a lot of friends in the media. And I thought, well, you know, I know so many people in the media that certainly they're going to help me. And I was only helped by one person, and which kind of surprised me, Malachi McCourt. He's a fairly famous author, and Malachi and I were pretty good buddies, and he was the only one that really tried to help me. And then it just kind of withered. And I mean, I was on some podcast with crazy people talking about the Illuminati and shape-shifting reptilians and things like that. It was very demoralizing at that point to spend that much time.
Why do you think they didn't have interest? And by the way, for maybe the average person that doesn't know about the Franklin cover up the Community Federal Credit Union and Lawrence King. Maybe share that story a little bit, because it is a very controversial story.
Well, in the 1980s, Lawrence King of Omaha ran a child trafficking network with Craig Spence of Washington, D.C. And they would fly kids mostly from Omaha. They would get a lot of kids from the orphanage, Boys Town. And then they'd fly them to D.C., and at D.C., there was Craig Spence's party house that was wired for audiovisual blackmail. And if
So he said that Larry King would fly kids from Nebraska to D.C. and compromise politicians. What did General Michael Flynn say?
We have the House of Representatives right now is totally, completely broken, and they're totally owned by the corporate lobbyists, and frankly by the globalists who own many of these people, because they've been compromised by on their some of these what they call Codell trips overseas, where these members of both the House and the Senate get compromised by sleeping with children. And they compromise. And these are real things. These are very real things. They get them caught up in the world of big bucks, big money.
Craig Spence's party house that was wired for audiovisual blackmail. And if someone decided to partake of any illicit goods at Spence's home, they would be blackmailed. And Spence was a CIA asset. All his I wrote a second book called Confessions of a DC Man, The Politics of Sex, Lies, and Blackmail, about a guy who ran a gay escort service, and Spence used his escorts to compromise closeted politicians. So I've written 2 books that pertain to Craig Spence, and there was a Nebraska Senate subcommittee that tried to get to the bottom of what was happening, but they were rolled over by federal firepower, much like what we've seen with Epstein, with corrupt grand juries and the Department of Justice being corrupt. So ultimately, what happened there was these grand juries, there were 2 grand juries, and I don't know if your audience is familiar with how grand juries work, because this will also come up with Epstein, the Epstein grand jury, except ham sandwich. And that's what happened with the Franklin network. That's what happened with the Franklin grand juries, and that's also what happened with the Epstein grand jury. Except with the Franklin grand juries, the kids that wouldn't recant, the FBI came in and got most of the kids to recant. The kids that wouldn't recant, there were 2 of them, were indicted for perjury. Paul Benassi was indicted on 3 counts of perjury. He was looking at 60 years. Alicia Owen was indicted on 8 counts of perjury from a state grand jury and 8 counts of perjury from a federal grand jury. And she was looking at 200 years. And she still refused to recant. Actually, both of them refused to recant. And Alicia was fed to a kangaroo court. And now here's a kid that came forward when she's 20 years old. They gave her 9 to 15 years in prison for perjury. And then the authorities really tried to destroy her. They put her in solitary confinement for 2 years, nearly 2 years, to be punitive. And actually what's amazing is Alicia has somehow survived it and is flourishing in life, which...
Is she still openly talking about it, or she's kind of moved on and doesn't want to talk about it?
Well, actually, I started a nonprofit 501c3 called Epstein Justice. And we want 2 simple things. We want to know why the government is covering up child abuse. If you cover up a crime, you're aiding and abetting that crime. So we want to know why the government is aiding and abetting child abuse. And she's
the one right there, Alicia Owen.
That is Alicia. And we want the perpetrators to be prosecuted, and Alicia is an associate director of Epstein Justice.
Wow. To give a little bit of context on the Franklin cover-up. So Lawrence King is coming up in a Republican Party. He's a superstar. He sang at the 1984 and 88 RNC.
1984, yeah.
1984, yeah. He sang. So, people are looking at this guy as a superstar, potentially. Who knows what's going to happen with him. And then there's the $30-40 million scam, which he goes away for the money, but nothing related to the events that were taking place with underage kids and, you know, the sex and all the stuff that's the scandal that was happening with this, right? Could you give a little bit more context about the story of Franklin cover-up?
Well, Lawrence King ran the Franklin Credit Union in Omaha, Nebraska, and he used that as a front for his child trafficking network. And what happened was he was able to stave off federal audits for a number of years, I think 4, and then he was audited and he came up $40 million short. So a Nebraska subcommittee formed to look at his looting of the Franklin Credit Union because he hadn't been audited in a while. But then when they started to form, people in social services came to them and they said, King is running a nationwide pedophile network. And they'd had various reports about King running a nationwide pedophile network. So then the subcommittee started to look at those allegations too. And they had an amazing investigator. His name was Gary Caradori. And he found a number of victims. Actually, I had his records, and he had a list of 60 victims. And that was my job, was to find these victims and get them to talk when I wrote the Franklin scandal. And a lot of the victims don't really use Social Security numbers. They're marginalized. They've come from lower socioeconomic, dysfunctional backgrounds. They've been molested repeatedly, and drugs was always the carrot for most of them. So they were given drugs, and then at a certain point, they lost their youthful marketability, and then they were just expunged by the network. And so ultimately, what you have there is a very dysfunctional individual that's going to go on to commit crimes and thereby compromise their own credibility. And we saw a lot of that. And I was able to find a number of victims and get them to talk to me. And that was tough because some of them didn't want to talk. And some of them, it took me a while to get them to talk. And then some of them really wanted to talk. But I went deep, deep, deep into this network. Like I said, I even got to it like a blackmail photographer. And I was very, very disillusioned by what happened when the Franklin. Ironically, the Franklin scandal is selling really well today, but it was not selling at all when it was published.
4 months ago, Marina Abramovich in the Epstein network, Tucker Carlson exposes disturbing art performances linked to notorious pedophile. The late Senator John McCain's wife says it all hides in plain sight.
It hides in plain sight. Epstein was hiding in plain sight. We all knew about him. We all knew what he was doing. But we had no one that was, no legal aspect that would go after him. They were afraid of him. For whatever reason, they were afraid of him.
To the island, I got taken to all the properties. The problem is if they release information, it's going to break people's minds. It'll bend their brains. A lot of people won't be able to handle it. So I suppose that's why they don't know what to do. Because if they release the truth, all hell will break loose.
Now, the first time you can really find any information on Jeffrey Epstein coming onto the scene, he's about 21 years old, and he gets a job teaching at the Dalton School, and he's a college dropout. And the man who hires him is Donald Barr. Okay. William Barr, who was Trump's attorney general, his father hired a 21-year-old Jeffrey Epstein to come teach at his prestigious school with no credentials. William Barr's father, Donald Barr. Now, I'd like to know how he met Epstein, because this is going to get interesting. How did he meet this guy? And why did he invite him to come teach at his school with no credentials? William Barr's father, Donald Barr, hired Jeffrey Epstein in the mid-1970s to teach math and science at the elite Dalton School in Manhattan, where Donald Barr was the headmaster. Lack of credentials. Jeffrey Epstein was hired as a 21-year-old without a college degree, which was an unconventional move by Donald Barr, who valued talent over formal credentials. So I'd like to know how they met And what was old William Barr's father, Donald Barr, doing before he met Epstein? Okay. In September 1973, a year before his tenure at Dalton ended, Barr published a book called Space Relations. The book is highly unsettling and depicts the raping of enslaved people, especially teenage girls, and other coercive sex acts for the dual purposes of entertainment and controlled procreation. So, how did they meet? And how disgusting that Trump's Attorney General's father was writing this kind of filth, violating young girls who were enslaved. So when did Donald Trump appoint William Barr to be his Attorney General? President Donald Trump announced his intent to nominate William Barr as Attorney General on December 7, 2018. He was confirmed by the Senate February 14, 2019, and sworn in the same day. So Donald Trump appointed William Barr to be the highest lawyer in the land, and his daddy had a relationship with Epstein. Okay? So here's William Barr's dad having a relationship with Epstein, and he's writing books about raping young girls. And a man who writes a book about raping young girls is the father of a person who becomes our Attorney General. You know, the chip off the old block, how you're like your parents. So his dad hired Epstein with no credentials, as he's writing a book on graping. So I'd like to know how those two met. And then years later, the president appoints his son to be the Attorney General. Okay. And in 2021, Jeffrey Epstein bragged that William Barr was in charge and not Trump, because Epstein had a relationship with the Barrs. The pedophile told Ehud Barak, that he had direct knowledge that William Barr was in charge in D.C., according to a new book that also claims Steve Bannon gave Epstein advice on his PR strategy. A controversial new book from the journalist Michael Wolff claims that the pedophile Jeffrey Epstein bragged that William Barr was the man in charge during Trump's time in office, and that the president let someone else be in charge until other people realize that someone other than him is in charge. So Epstein felt confident that he was going to get out of this because of his relationship with Daddy Barr, and I'm sure he was close with William Barr. So when Jeffrey Epstein was arrested, Attorney General Bill Barr will not recuse himself from Jeffrey Epstein's child sex prosecution, even though he knew him. So he decided he's going to stay on board over this case after Jeffrey Epstein says William Barr's in charge. William Barr does not recuse himself from this case. So then I put, how many minutes are missing off of the Epstein surveillance camera in prison? Metadata analysis of the surveillance video near Epstein's prison cell revealed that approximately 2 minutes and 53 seconds were cut from one of the source clips used in the publicly released video. Now, look at this. Was William Barr, as the Attorney General, the one who had oversight of the prisons? Yes, William Barr, who Jeffrey Epstein worked for his father from 20 years old, who has a long relationship with the Barrs, and William Barr didn't recuse himself from the case, was also the one in charge over the prison where 3 minutes is missing. Yes, William Barr was the U.S. Attorney General who had ultimate oversight over federal prisons managed by the Federal Bureau of Prisons during his 2 terms in office. The Attorney General, as the head of the Department of Justice, is responsible for supervising and directing all components of the department, which includes the Federal Bureau of Prisons. How long was Epstein in prison before his death? Jeffrey Epstein was in that little prison for 36 days, supposedly, because 3 minutes are missing. And his buddy, who he says is in charge, was in charge of everything. Jeffrey Epstein's buddy, who was in charge of the prison, who he said was in charge of everything, including in charge of the prison, and 3 minutes are missing. Jeffrey Epstein spent 36 whole days in there. So it says, would a government fake the death of a high-profile inmate? While there are no publicly confirmed cases of the United States government officially faking the death of a high-profile inmate, it is not outside the realm of possibility that a state intelligence agency could attempt such a scheme in extraordinary circumstances for strategic purposes. And what did Bill Barr say after Epstein's, quote, suicide? Epstein's death was a perfect storm of screw-ups, says Attorney General Barr. So where do you think Epstein is? So now who's Trump's new Attorney General in this? And remember, she could have done something to Epstein when she was in Florida as the Attorney General in Florida. Now, she lived in Palm Beach, right around Trump. Epstein lived 2 miles from Trump. She was in Palm Beach. Pam Bondi could have tried Epstein while Florida Attorney General. Pam Bondi has been failing Epstein victims for years. So she showed loyalty, didn't go after him. She probably knew they were friends. And then Trump rewarded her with the Attorney General position in D.C. So Bill Barr protected Trump. None of it would come out. And Pam Bondi didn't go after Epstein, so none of it would have come out. Did President Trump meet Pam Bondi in Florida? Yes, President Trump met the Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi in Florida, notably at a Tampa rally in March 2016, where she endorsed him just before the state primary. And some people say their relationship's longer than that. This is what we're being told. And they had a long-standing relationship involving fundraisers, discussions about potential government roles, including when she was considered for Attorney General. Potential government roles, okay? Key meetings and interactions. Now look at 2013. Pam Bondi's office considered investigating Trump University for all their scandals and fraud, but decided against it shortly after receiving a $25,000 donation from Trump's foundation to a political group supporting her. So Trump bought his Attorney General. March 2016, Bondi endorsed Trump at a major rally in Florida, solidifying their connection before the state's primary election. December 2016 at Trump Tower, Bondi met with President-elect Trump to discuss potential roles in his administration, sparking criticism due to their past interactions. Bondi later served in Trump's administration, including as a spokesperson and advisor, which was considered for Attorney General, leading to continued scrutiny over their relationship. Their relationship, marked by this early endorsement and the controversial Trump University donation, remained a significant point of discussion throughout Trump's political career. When did Trump appoint Pam Bondi as his Attorney General? November 21st, 2024. Yes or no? In Trump's second term, did calls to release the Epstein files increase? So he needed protection. Yes, calls to release the Epstein files significantly increased during Donald Trump's second term, culminating in an overwhelming bipartisan push in Congress to legally mandate their release. And what they have released so far, 90% of the Epstein files are totally redacted. Can't see anything on it. So she stayed loyal to him.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable. Do you want to waste the time and do you feel like answering?
I don't mind answering.
I mean, I can't believe you're asking a question on Epstein at a time like this where we're having some of the greatest success and also tragedy with what happened in Texas. It just seems like a desecration.
Is if they release information, it's going to break people's minds. It'll bend their brains. A lot of people won't be able to handle it. So I suppose that's why they don't know what to do. Because if they release the truth, all hell will break loose.
And why is Epstein's shadow looming large over Donald Trump and his new fiance's relationship?
What Donald Trump Jr. is thinking right now.
I'm fine with all the other lists. As long as I'm not on the Epstein list, we're good, right? Speaking of which, how is it that my father could be convicted of 34 crimes, but no one on Epstein's list has even been brought to light? I'm trying to figure out how that's possible, right, bud? It's almost like they're trying to protect those for some reason. I can't imagine why.
I wonder.
So on December 15th, 2025, Trump introduces Don Jr. and his new fiance.
Not often that I'm at a loss for words because we usually do the ranting and raving really well, but this is a little different. But I just want to wish all of you guys an incredible holiday season, a Merry Christmas, a very Happy New Year, and to thank Bettina for that one word, yes. It's almost, when you go down there and it's like you're going to go and you're trying to ask, and you're not sure what the answer is going to be. It's always a little bit rough, but she said yes, so that's a big win for the end of the year. Would you like to say something, Bettina?
Now, y'all think about how crazy this is. This is just a girl, supposedly a society girl in Palm Beach, who's going to the White House Christmas party, and they're going to give her the podium to speak. What is so important about her? But wait, we'll find out.
Wow, what a privilege it is to be here in the White House, Mr. President. Thank you so much for hosting this incredible party. And to our First Lady, these decorations, am I right? Are they unbelievable? It's really been the most unforgettable weekend of my life, and I get to marry the love of my life, and I feel just like the luckiest girl in the world. So thank you, and thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, thank you.
Who is Donald Trump Jr.'s fiance? All about socialite Bettina Anderson. Bettina Anderson's father, Harry Lloyd Anderson Jr., became the youngest bank president. Where money went through in like Franklin. Her father became the youngest bank president in the U.S. in 1970. Palm Beach Daily News. Harry Lloyd Anderson, youngest bank president, dies at 70 years old. He died in Washington, D.C.
Is if they release information, it's going to break people's minds. It'll bend their brains. A lot of people won't be able to handle it. So I suppose that's why they don't know what to do. Because if they release the truth, all hell will break loose.
Did Donald Trump know Harry Lloyd Anderson Jr.? Yes, it is widely reported that Donald Trump knew Harry Lloyd Anderson Jr. Harry Lloyd Anderson Jr. was the father of Bettina Anderson, Donald Trump Jr.'s fiance. Donald Trump approved of the son relationship with Bettina, who frequently socialized at Mar-a-Lago and attended White House events with the Trump family. Bettina's father, banker dad of Donald Trump Jr.'s bride-to-be, vouched for Jeffrey Epstein as a man of the highest integrity to help him get pedo island tax breaks. The father of Donald Trump Jr.'s fiance once wrote a letter of recommendation on the behalf of Jeffrey Epstein, a report has claimed. Harry Lloyd Anderson Jr., the late father of socialite Benita Anderson, vouched for the pedophile in 1999 in a letter submitted to the authorities in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Anderson wrote that Epstein should be entitled to some generous tax incentives which would have saved him tens of millions of dollars a year because he was a gentleman of the highest integrity. Just like the Franklin cover-up. Business connections. Anderson Jr., Benita's father, who died in 2013, was notable for becoming one of the youngest bank presidents in the U.S. at the age of 26. Reports from social media and various outlets have circulated claims that the bank he led, Palm Beach National Bank and Trust, handled some of the financial transactions related to Jeffrey Epstein's legal settlements, and that Donald Trump sat on the board of directors for the bank and had to approve the payments. These claims link the two men through mutual business connection. So Donald Trump Jr., who was like talking about release the files, release the names who's on it, really, it's all a WWE episode. So Benita's father and Donald Trump approved loans for Jeffrey Epstein. Don Jr. is marrying an Epstein friend. Harry Lloyd Anderson Jr. was the president of the Palm Beach National Bank and Trust, okay, where Jeffrey Epstein held accounts starting in the early 1990s. Anderson Jr. provided a letter of reference for Epstein in the 1990s in his bank process payments that were allegedly used to pay Epstein victims. So Trump's new daughter-in-law will be the daughter of an Epstein ally that Trump is also connected to. A deep, dark web of evil. The Bible says that no deceit was found in Jesus's mouth. So watch who you're putting on a pedestal. It shouldn't be Trump. I pray this was an eye-opener for you to rethink some things. I love y'all. This is a dark world. Thank you for watching. If you appreciate the content that you find on this channel, would you prayerfully consider supporting the ministry?